Y'all ready? Welcome in to the fifth dimension. Can we save the Amazon? Conversation with Paul Rosolie. And I want to welcome everybody in to the Fifth Dimension podcast, where we are elevating levels of consciousness, quite simply, trying to live a better life, make the world a little bit of a better place. I have a very special guest joining me all the way from India. I got familiar with his work during the time of the Amazon forest fires, which I'm sure you're all well aware of, which are still burning. But joining me all the way from India, we have Paul Rosolie. Paul, thanks for joining the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, not a problem. So I know you do a lot of work in the Amazon, and we'll definitely get into that. But what's sort of been your focus in India at the moment? I know you spend a lot of time there during the year as well.
Wherever I work, my focus is protecting wildlife. My whole life is based under the fact that we've lost 50% of the wildlife on our planet since 1970, and that compared to humans and farm animals, wildlife only makes up, way less than 10% of what's on this planet. We're just losing our wild animals so quickly. So in India, I'm trying to follow wild tigers and elephants as they migrate between fragmented forests and try to survive in the country that has over a billion people. Somehow these giant megafaunal creatures are still managing to survive, and citizens are still able to protect them. And so there's a lot here that can be applied to other places, and a lot of amazing stories and sort of this jungle book sort of landscape.
hmm And I know you sort of wrote a book that kind of highlights on this. I haven't finished it. I'm about halfway through.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
but it's a really mesmerizing book. The Girl and the Tiger, your newest book, and this is a true story about a girl who found tiger cubs. I mean, can you kind of tell me a little bit about that? Is this sort of representative of what's going on with, you know, maybe tigers in particular, but also you highlight the issue going on with the elephants? Is this sort of a widespreading phenomenon that's going on in India and sort of representative of what's going on?
Yeah, so I wanted to, with this book, I mean, I've been doing all this research and all this field work of going around and following the tigers and hearing different stories and seeing tigers in the wild. It took me 6 or 7 years to see my first one, because there's only just over 3,000 left on Earth. So the
Mhm.
chance of seeing something that's that rare that does not want to be seen is just incredibly hard to do. And so all of these stories, and then of course, yeah, the elephants and what they're going through, and they're like their own society. I mean, forget the primates, forget the dolphins and whales. I think that in terms of human emotion, I think the elephants are actually the closest to us in terms of how they are with their families, how they think,
Mm.
and just in so many ways. So yeah, this story came together though as a way, instead of doing nonfiction and saying like, okay, there's 3,000 elephants per square mile and like giving facts.
Mhm.
This story came out of that, all these experiences in the jungle I've gotten this unique insight into how these animals think and how they are on an emotional level. And I wanted to take people through that. And fiction allows me to do that and to really actually sort of tell a few things more accurately than I could do with nonfiction. Because nonfiction, you sort of have to cite everything and have
Mhm.
research for it. And it's like, well, there's some things you learn that are just easier to explain if you just explain it. Um, so yeah, when this girl contacted me and she said, I had met her, her and her family had come to the Amazon, and she's from India, and she was very young at the time. She was maybe 15 years old, and I got this email from her, and it said, "I'm I'm going to go try and rescue these orphan tiger cubs, and you're the jungle guy, so you have to tell me, what do I feed them? Where do I take them? How do I care for these things?" And just her commitment to do that started all of this off, and it
Mhm.
turned into this book, which now is turning into, is as this spreads. It's just out a few months ago, so as this spreads across the world, it's just amazing seeing how it's sort of tapping into people's emotions on wildlife and forests and our connection to nature. So it's been a wild journey. I've almost died several times writing this book. So it's
Yeah.
good that it's out there. It's good to be at this point.
No, absolutely. And there's is definitely something much more empowering about a narrative and connecting with characters. And I found that when I'm reading it, I can't put it down because I'm so attached to not only the girl, but the tiger. I feel that,
Yeah,
there's something I've embraced myself is sort of the oneness you could say that does exist between myself and other species and myself and the other earth.
yeah,
There was a quote that I did want to pick out that I really connected with. It's about the balance of nature. So it says, "Balance, like peace, is an exception to the norm in the world of man." And that kind of stood out to me just because I majored in history, and so I've studied all about the starts of civilization, and it's kind of
uh
true
huh,
that there is no true balance between men and nature. It's always sort of been about an exploitation, if you will, and sort of
yeah.
using it as a resource as opposed to preserving the sacredness. Do you think that this book it's sort of helping drive the conversation on like the necessity for a mindset shift? Do you think I do believe this mindset shift is absolutely necessary if we are going to save the planet and save a lot of our species. But how do you kind of see this shift taking place? And is this book sort of trying to help drive that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, under it all, the purpose of a novel is to metaphorically bring out an idea, whatever that idea is. And so, yeah, with this book, the whole purpose of it, the driving force behind it, is that shift and that question of like, well, what is, where are we right now, and what is that balance? And see, I think of it when you work in the jungle, you see that balance really isn't um, even a single organism's life is this momentary thing. You
Mhm.
have you think of insect infestations and overpopulations, or like deer overrunning a national park, and then wolves being reintroduced, and then regulating the deer, and it's like everything sort of has this boom and then bust, and it's like balance is achieved through constant spikes and then drops in
Mhm.
various things. And so like at this point, humans have broken free of that. We have medical care and ambulances, and we're living longer, and we are able to, with construction, we can just take wilderness and turn it into, roads and cities and villages. I mean, they built Dubai out of the desert. I mean,
Right.
so now we're just taking over everything. I think 70% of the landmass that's not under ice is controlled by humans. So like we're just all over the world. So part of this book that I feel like is so important is, what would an elephant think if you could interview an elephant and say, well, what do you think about these human things? And like an elephant would just be like, man, they're the worst.
Mhm.
They're cutting down our forests, they're throwing fireballs at us, they won't let us eat their crops, they're making roads through our migration routes. They would just be like, we are literally like the zombie apocalypse to them. Like, and they don't, and that's the way I can see it in their eyes, man. When I hang out with elephants, their contempt for humans, they're just like, oh man, not another one. Like, I've literally walked in on wild elephants and just seen them go, oh no, because they just
Mm.
associate us with something bad, and they know what's going on.
Right, absolutely. I mean, that's a great way to put it. They would kind of view us as like a zombie apocalypse. We're almost like a plague, if you will, because
Yeah,
we are destroying their habitat, and
yeah,
it's difficult for us, I guess, especially people who might not be there doing it. It's difficult for us to kind of realize what our own impact, or you can even say like carbon footprint, if you want to put it that way, what our impact over here has on the elephants and all the species, because we're all kind of complicit in a way just by using these technologies and demanding
sure,
specific goods. So I do think there
yeah,
definitely needs to be that striking balance, if you will. Um,
yeah.
so,
The other thing that I have to add to that is that along with, I mean, so there's what, or we were approaching 8 billion people on Earth.
mhm,
If the thing is, let's just say there was 2 or 3 billion, and we were a little more organized, and we didn't quite have no regulation on reproduction and what we could what we could destroy in terms of rivers and ocean ecosystems and everything else. The world is a big place. Like there's a lot for everyone. There's enough to go
Right.
around. It's just, and that's another part of the conversation that gets really touchy. I brought up population to someone at a talk recently, and one person raised their hand and said, "Well, that's racist. Saying there's too many people is racist." And I said, "Well, how is that racist? I'm saying there's too much of all of us. I'm not saying there's too
Mhm.
much of any one type of person. There's too many humans."
Right.
And then someone else came in, and this was from a religious perspective, and they were saying, well, this woman was very honest. She said, I in my teachings in Catholicism, it says, we should be fruitful and multiply and keep going. And I was like, yes, but given the modern reality where there's so many people that there's literally a billion poor people. It's like,
Mhm.
all of the source of our economies, all the wealth we have, whether you live in a fishing community or whether you live in New York City or Tokyo, it all starts in a forest. Everything, it all used to be nature. So we've used all that to achieve all this. And it's like now we're testing the resiliency of the systems, and that's the problem. I'm not some tree hugger that wants to go live in mud huts and go back to the Stone Age, but it's like we just have to be respectful of what keeps you alive. It's like, not burning down your house to heat yourself in the winter. It's like you got to just figure out how to make it work. Make a fireplace.
Right, absolutely. It's sort of we're not going back on any of the technologies we have, and
No, and I don't think we should. Our technology is fantastic. I'm talking to you from
right,
India. That's like a magic. It's
right,
magical. It's incredible.
exactly, and, like, it's like, how can we learn to grow with it? If anything, the technology is great, and we've cured so many diseases, and we
Yeah,
have this, like,
yeah,
global connection, as you're saying, between you and I. I'm in California and you're in India, opposite time zones, so
yeah.
you know, there's this potential for great global connectivity as, like, a species, but the population's only going to keep going up. I think it's supposed to be like 10 billion by 2050, or there's
Oh,
something like that. So,
yeah,
and there's obviously no going back on that either. So it's sort of, we need this, almost, I would call it maybe a structure of reorganization of how we're organizing ourselves, how we're using different resources. And I guess that sort of starts at the I would say that starts at the individual level and gaining that
sure.
individual awareness, which we can keep definitely getting into. I kind of wanted to ask. So Isha, the main character,
Yeah.
she starts off as this city girl, right, and
Uh
living
huh.
in the city, but she sort of has this calling to nature. I mean,
Yes.
I can kind of relate to that in the sense that I don't do well in cities, and I sort of need to be in a more nature esque environment. I mean, would you say
Hmm.
it's sort of uh, relatable to your story as well? I mean, I know you're from New York originally. Was that right?
Yeah.
So you're from,
Yeah.
like, the city as well. How did you initially get into, I mean, we could even move into the Amazon. How did you get into working in Amazon and deforestation, the restoration of these species coming from that city background? Because there's my brother works as an outdoor educator, and he has kids coming in from Los Angeles who have never even seen the ocean, or
Yeah.
never even been in nature, and so there isn't that nature exposure for a lot of city kids. How did you end up uh, getting into it?
That's a great question because yeah, and I feel like with some people it's just like coded in their DNA.
Mm,
Yeah, so for that, I mean, for that character, I did put a lot of myself into it, into her. Um, but yeah, it was kind of like that for me. I mean, I never, when you're a 3-year old living in the city or in the suburbs or wherever you're living, it's like I had this innate need to be in the forest. I always wanted to be in a forest. And when my parents, the weekend would come and they'd say, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I guess I don't know what other kids were doing, video games or something, but I was like, I want to go to the stream.
mm,
I want to go to the forest, and I wanted to go as a little kid, catch frogs and insects and look around and explore. And then as I got older, that turned into just my parents took me to the Bronx Zoo, so I always had this idea that okay, so there are these people that go out to these crazy places, these countries I've never heard of, and they're seeing these animals that might as well be dragons. Like they're just seeing these crazy
mhm,
animals. And of course, at the Bronx Zoo, they tell you that it's all disappearing, and the conservation stuff, and the roads go into a rainforest. So I knew all that from as long as I could remember. and I was very stressed out by it. I had a lot of like eco guilt as a kid. Like I was like, man, like this. You watch a documentary and this beautiful documentary about like tigers or something, and they're like, yeah, this is what the tiger does. It catches the deer, and at the end, but the tigers are going extinct, and pretty soon the global population will wipe them out. And it's like, oh my god, it was just such dark stuff, and it really affected me. It made me very upset. Um,
Mhm.
so as a teenager, I was living in northern New Jersey and going out to these state parks and forests and stuff. And I would go out with my dog, and my game was I would get lost, and
Mhm.
then once I was lost, I would bring like one or two matches with me. That's it, and like sleeping bag, dog, shoes. Like that's it. And like I would just go out and then have to survive for the weekend, and I'd make it back by Sunday.
Wow.
Um, so
It's pretty
yeah, I
intense.
started doing that. Yeah, I mean, and I taught myself outdoor craft through that. And then my
Mhm.
parents started fostering it, and they found a few like, little local outdoor schools and stuff like for summer camp kind of things. And then, yeah, by the time I was in high school, I was just miserable, getting into fight with teachers, wasn't getting good grades. And so I dropped out after sophomore year of high school, got my GED, which is like the equivalent of a high school diploma,
Mhm.
and started college at like 17. And then just because I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm going to take control of my life because I had hated sitting in school my whole life. So I was like, I'm going to take control of this thing. I said, I'm going to the Amazon. And I did.
That's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
I could definitely relate coming from a teaching background because I have my teaching credential and I've worked a lot in the schools. There is no sort of, especially for someone with a calling like you to the outdoors, there isn't really any, you learn the scientific facts and about the different species and about different habitats, but there's
Hmm.
no what I would say immersive experiences in that you're not getting students outside and
Yeah.
you're not getting students to actually learn about this and kind of what you do with your book, bring it to an emotional level and get students to
Uh-huh.
actually like sort of attach to that. So I could kind of see why, someone like you would drop out and because it's not um
Yeah.
it's not working for you. It's not you're not learning what you want to learn. So when you got to the Amazon, this is sort of I know a lot of people you gain some like name recognition during the Amazon fires, and what has sort of been your work there? How has it evolved over time as opposed to when you first got there, as opposed to what you're doing now? I know you have a couple different organizations there as well now. So
Yeah.
how has it kind of evolved over time, and what have you seen take place over the years?
Well, when I got there, I was just, an 18-year-old kid who, didn't know much. And I just the second I stepped foot in the jungle, I was just like this. It was very clear to me on a cellular level. Like I was just, it was like a movie scene. I was like, oh, I'm home.
Hmm.
This is amazing. Just looking at those giant ancient trees and seeing all the wildlife. And I started working with the local guys, and they were trying to protect their forest by bringing foreigners into the jungle, like basically ecotourism. And their thing was that they had the jungle and they had the skills and the knowledge. They even knew English, but they didn't have access to gringos really. And I was like, guys, it's like I can help you with the gringos. I was like, I'm from there. And
Hmm.
so, my first time down there, I remember them, they were all kind of shocked because I didn't want to sleep. All I wanted to do was be out in the jungle. Like I didn't want to waste a single second of it. And I was learning everything I could from them. And these guys can track animals from miles and miles away. They can, they know all the medicinal plants. They know everything about the jungle. And the one thing that they didn't know about was snakes. And I've always had this weird connection to snakes. I've always understand fascinated by them. I've always been rescuing snakes from people that want to kill them
Hmm.
because yeah, I mean, I remember the first snake that I ever rescued was some old guy. He's going, "Back up, honey! It's a water moccasin," and he's trying to kill it. This is New York. There's no water moccasins. There's water snakes, and they're not dangerous. So as this guy was getting ready to kill the snake, I sort of like tackled him out of the way and picked up this snake. And I was like, "You idiot!" I was like, "The snake's perfectly fine," and it bit me on the hand. And I was like, "See, see." The snake had no idea what was going on, so he was just like, "I'm scared," and he bit me.
Right.
Um, and the guy was screaming and everything. But in the Amazon, the locals, they really are scared of snakes. And so when I started catching snakes, they were like, "Oh man," they're like, "Can you teach us like how to figure this out?" So I actually luckily had this one thing that I could sort of exchange
Mm,
with them. And then we became friends. I went back home. I brought gringos, and then it just turned into Tamandua Expeditions. And now I bring people from all over the world, and we create jobs for all these local guys that would be loggers, poachers, gold miners, farmers, whatever. All these things that would take apart the forest. Now they're working as chefs and boat drivers and guides, and they're just
mm,
they're protecting their forest, and they're showing people from all over the world the rainforest and how beautiful it is, and they love this job and it pays better, and so everyone's happy. um,
mm.
so
Wow.
that's how all that started, and this is all what I wrote about in my first book, which is called Mother of God.
Mm.
Bad title choice, because a lot of people go, I don't want to read a book about God, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
we messed up on that, because the region is called the Madre de Dios, the Mother of God region, and it's like because it's the birthplace of the Amazon.
Mm,
um, but uh, but yeah, so it's since that time, it's just been really, I've just been trying to protect this one river in the Amazon, this one really crucial, super wild river. I mean, there's still tribes on this river that have never seen metal, a spoon, the wheel.
oh, wow.
They're just out there in the jungle, and they have been for at least the last, so 5,000, 10,000 years. And of course, this place is just like Avatar on Earth. It's just packed with animals, giant old trees, anacondas, all this crazy stuff. So I've been working to protect this river for years and years and years, and I've been filming every year when it burns. I go out into the fires, and I try and rescue whatever animals I can. I try and do whatever I
Mhm.
can. And of course, there's just some sick part of me that just like when it's burning, I want to be in it. It's
Yeah.
like, if something bad's gonna happen, fine. But like this, some things are so impressive to see, um, that I'd rather see it than not if it's gonna happen anyway. And it's like, well, when the fires burn, it's like you just have these 100 foot, 150-foot pillars of flame, and it's just this entire beautiful ecosystem is falling apart. And it's like, I mean, there's spider monkeys running for their lives, and there's birds flying. And then after the fires go through, there's all these dead animals anywhere, everywhere. It's very apocalyptic. And so
Mhm.
this year I had filmed this video while I was there. I was filming a documentary, and I turned my phone on like selfie mode, and I was standing in the forest and I was just screaming at my phone about how everything we're losing and how this can't keep going, and da-da-da. And then when the Amazon fires, when it hit the news, surprise, surprise, I've been down there 13 years, it's never hit the news. When it hit the news, I uploaded that video,
Mhm.
and then the next morning it was, everything had changed. The news, all those news stations wanted to get in touch with me, everybody, all of a sudden. Then, like you said, all of a sudden I had this, I was the Amazon guy.
Yeah.
um, but at this point we're protecting 30,000 acres. I run a team of 6 rangers. I work with this organization called Junglekeepers, and this amazing team of people that, local and international, who are just committed to protecting this river. And so we're doing everything we can, and we don't have enough tools to do that, but we're doing what we can while we can. So
Right. So, and with, Tamandua expeditions, and so you're kind of bringing people into the Amazon for that sort of immersive experience. And I'd say they're obviously going into the Amazon, you can kind of get that emotional attachment to it because you're there, you're experiencing it. And I think that's amazing that you work with the indigenous people there as well, who are, I feel like oftentimes sort of when you're looking at this as a global debate about deforestation in the Amazon, the indigenous cultures and people who live there, they're brought up on occasion, but they're never included in any sort of, if we're looking at the government policy behind deforestation, they're almost sort of forgotten. Like
yeah,
they're not humanistic policies by any means. I mean, what is sort of the state of the Amazon fires like right now? I mean, I feel like there was sort of a big uproar about it for, I mean, I want to say maybe a couple weeks to a month,
yeah,
but then
maybe,
it's sort of just fell off the map, if you will, if you want to
yeah,
put it at that. So mean, you were saying you've been there over 10 years at this point, and this happens every year from
yeah.
what I'm,
And
yeah.
it's been
So,
happening since before I was born. I mean, we've been burning the Amazon badly for at least the last 30, 40 years, every year.
mhm,
And
so
so, sorry, go.
I was just gonna ask, so I mean, yeah, could you kind of like build on that? Maybe why did it pick up steam when it did this year? And I mean, it
Yeah.
sort of fell off the map again. Do you want to just kind of, I guess you can just go into further what you were about to say?
Yeah, no, the reason, I mean, again, every year this happens. And so what happened this year was the fires were a little worse this year than they have been in previous years. because the president of Brazil is rolling back the regulations and he's encouraging Brazilian citizens to go in and colonize the Amazon, which the first thing that I was trying to explain to people is the difference between the indigenous people and these outsiders from the cities in Brazil who are going into these forests, into the indigenous people's land and cutting it down. Because, of course, in the US, I would be like, we have to stop this from happening. And then some people would inevitably, in this politically correct time we live in, be like, how could you say that? Those are indigenous people just trying to make a living. And I was like, no,
Mhm.
the Amazon fires are killing the indigenous people, you idiots. And they're just looking for some bleeding heart to throw themselves on. But no,
Right.
these are people coming from other regions, invading the indigenous territories, setting fire to the Amazon, clearing the forest, killing everything in it, and then farming. It's like it's a very stupid, it's a short-term profit for a few people that's impoverishing everybody else. But what happened this year was that the fires were so bad and the weather was just right that the fires blew over Sao Paulo, Brazil, and there was sort of this daytime eclipse. And you can look up pictures, and it's like the sky is black and it looks like the end of the world. And people uploaded this to social media. And when
Mhm.
that happened, that's when all the news agencies picked it up because it was like apocalypse in the Amazon. This is it. And that's what really got people excited, and that's what sent the whole thing in motion. And then my video, I think I just happened to be the only person that was dumb enough to be standing in the fires, ranting about it. And so I was the first person that had sort of on the ground coverage of this. And then I spent, from that time, I think that was sometime in August or maybe early September, and then from that time, I spent the next month of my life in newsrooms explaining to people. Because then you get people going, "Well, forests burn, man. It's a natural process." And I was like, "Yeah, California forests burn. That is not
Right.
a natural process in the Amazon." So everyone kept getting it wrong in these little ways. They'd say, "Well, you can't fight the indigenous people." Yes, well, these aren't the indigenous people. Then they say that the forest is supposed to burn. No, it's not. You got that wrong. And then you had like celebrities going, well, we're going to fly planes over the Amazon and we're going to put out the fires. So give us money. And it's like, you're going to put out 70,000 fires on an ecosystem that's larger than the continental US. It's not going to happen. It's not a realistic thing to do. Um,
Mhm.
so the fires was just, it was just this big thing. And yeah, everyone flared up about it for like a week. I felt like it was like a week. And then
Yeah.
everyone went right back to food selfies, Donald Trump, blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah, whatever we usually talk about. And the thing is, it's going to happen next year. And
Right.
I just talked to my guys in the field, and I'm going to be down there in another 2 weeks. And, they said the rains are starting, so the fires are becoming less. But
Okay.
as soon as we get down to May, June, around June, July time, then it's going to start up all over again. And I'm already thinking of like, what is the best way is there any way to recreate that? Because as horrible as it was, it was important that people, for once, were feeling the appropriate amount of hysteria for what's going on. Because usually it's out of sight, out of mind. We all wake up, go to our jobs, hang out with our families, come home, and like we're just so cut off from this stuff. And you don't
Mhm.
realize that out there's this massive battle being fought for like the future of this planet. And it's very, very real.
Mhm.
And for once that was like front and center in the news circuit, and that was so important. And I want to get back there because a lot can get done when we're there.
Right. Right. And then I remember actually watching that video of you that
Yeah.
ranting into your phone. And that's sort of what, got me onto your work.
Yeah.
And I mean, I kind of I wonder like what is I mean, this is something that's happening every year, and you're right. It's sort of we just after a week or 2, you just sort of maybe I thought it was like a month because I was following your page, and so I was
Yeah,
seeing you
yeah, I was
talk
keeping
about
it
it.
going, man.
Yeah, so, I mean, so I was in it for about, as long as I mean, I still care about it now too. I'm still paying
Yeah, of
attention to it,
course.
but, so I wonder, like, what is sort of the long-term outlook looking right now? I mean, it feels to me like there might not be, especially under Bolsonaro, who I've been reading up about, is just
Oh god, yeah.
so on the side of the cattle ranchers, and it all seems to me that it's based around short-term profits and, economic gain. It feels to me like there isn't a like money making solution to stopping deforestation for, the governments and for the cattle ranchers, at least one that I can find. But
Yeah.
what is sort of the future suggesting? What is it looking like? I mean, I know you guys are doing great work right now, and with the outroar we had this year, do you think, I mean, that could that potentially translate to further conservation in the future? I mean, what is sort of your long term um, prediction or view as of right now?
Well, the my long-term prediction and my long-term strategy are different things. Like, if we keep going this way and if we keep burning it every year, there's a very real chance that if we see, the Amazon is a system that it produces all this moisture, and then that moisture forms the clouds and it rains back down on the Amazon. So this is a closed system that's recycling about a fifth of the water on our planet. So it's a crucial thing. No matter where you live in the world, if we lost the Amazon tomorrow, like, we'd all be screwed.
Mhm.
So um, as we cut this and burn this, eventually, if we get to the tipping point where the Amazon can't water itself and then it just dries and burns down, you're looking at life on Earth changing drastically. Then we're in, like, day after tomorrow, Independence Day, like weird post-apocalyptic movie world.
Mhm.
Which I don't think anybody wants to do that. But the what I see with, like, Bolsonaro and stuff is like, this is not rocket science. This is not as complicated as, like, going to the moon. This is at the end of the day, this is how do we get people to stop cutting down trees? That's a simple question.
Mhm.
In my experience, give them better jobs. And so you can say, well, it's so complicated. There's so many different types of people. But the U.S., let's just say, let's just say we were the type of country that elected leaders that understood biology and just cared a little bit about nature.
Tall
Um,
task.
yeah, tall task. Hashtag our fault. But if we did that, we could very quickly say, well, look, we really, really care about this. And so does a lot of Europe. And so does really a lot of the rest of the world. Why don't we put some really sweet trade deals together and say, hey, Brazil, look, if you can bring your deforestation back down to zero or close to it, we will hook you guys up. Like, you will not miss cutting down trees because we got so much better stuff over here. And again, just come up with an economic solution to it and be like, guys, look, you're going to be making bank over here. Don't even look at the
Mhm.
Amazon. We really care about that. And we think that you guys have a treasure in your country. We don't want to own it. We just want to support you and support you guys protecting it. Let's do this. We could do it overnight. It would be so easy. We have the capacity to do it. And that is why the way that this story broke this year, the fact that it was on social media, the fact that people were talking about it, the fact that it was emotional was so actually encouraging to me, because that's what we need. We need enough people caring about this that we can get to the point where it goes from the individual, like you were saying, to the elected official, to the policy level, to the point where we say, okay, this is a global priority. This is something we all care about, and that is important to all of us and our children. So
Mhm.
let's get this done, because we can fix this so easily. It's just that's the thing that kills you about conservation is, like, people are like, oh no, wolves are going extinct. It's like, all right, well, stop killing all the deer, paving all the land, and shooting the
Mhm.
wolves. It's like, if you just leave them alone, they've always been there. Just
Right.
stop doing the stupid shit you're doing, and then they'll be there.
Absolutely. There's so much human interference. It's hard. It feels impossible for so many people to look self-analysis of their own actions, analysis of what is society doing. But
Yeah.
I think there's almost society doesn't encourage a self-analysis, and they kind of want to just, oh, we're just going to keep going the way we're going, and
Well, they want happy
hopefully
consumers.
nobody has an uproar. What was it? You cut out
They
on that.
they want happy consumers. I mean, if we're worried about the world ending, then we're all going to start making different decisions. Um,
Absolutely.
but with this, I think, if I literally saw people's perspective change with the Amazon fires. People that were like, the same people that would be like, well, I don't really know if I believe in global warming. They're kind of like on the fence. They're
Mhm.
whatever. And then with this, they'd be like, well, man, if the Amazon's burning, then, like, we do have to do something. Like, this is
Right.
serious. Like, everyone can agree on that. No one wants to see millions and millions of animals incinerated and the entire health of the planet destroyed. And so it gave this moment of like focused clarity that nothing else has given. And there was to me that was encouraging because it was like, okay, I for once felt like I had like a clear picture of like what we need because you were getting so many new people coming over to the camp of saying, oh my God, you're right. This does need to change.
Absolutely. And I think there's a need to sort of separate issues like, the Amazon burning and deforestation and global warming in general
Yeah.
from the partisan politics side of it.
Oh
I mean,
God.
because there's such a divide. I mean, if you look at the statistics, it's like Republicans are much more likely to not believe in climate change and global warming.
Yeah.
So we're sort of just following, I guess you could say following like sheep, if you will, along the party lines and not thinking critically about these issues or analyzing critically about these issues. So, I mean, would you just say what is sort of is your way of separating it from partisan politics by bringing in awareness and having it show up in social media? I mean, is that also sort of what you're doing with the expeditions in the Amazon, bringing it to the individual level and getting them to feel that emotion side of it, as opposed to just turning a blind eye, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, dude, that whole thing. See, like I live in the jungle and I have for my entire adult life. So when I go home and get hit with that tsunami of like news media that you just can't avoid
Mhm.
of, that chatter, that constant CNN thing and like the Fox News and all that stuff. And I see people's conversations and what they're talking about. And it's all like who said what and who's running for what. And it's like I get very overwhelmed and very sort of stressed out immediately because it's like I'm literally watching our planet be eaten. And then
Mhm.
I go back and they're so worried about like what, Trump tweeted and some
Right.
don't let them do this. It's like, oh my God, like you guys can't be like it literally reminds me of like going to a city now makes me think of going and sticking my head in like a termite's nest where they're all really, really concerned about like the he said, she said inside the termite's nest, completely oblivious to the fact that there's a bulldozer outside the termite's nest about to flatten it. That's
Mhm.
like, I literally feel like that's what's happening. And so, yeah, man, like I come, I mean, I have friends on both sides. It sucks that I even have to say sides, but you're right. Like the certain, each side has their state approved sort of issues that they think. And with the environment, what I try to do is like be like, guys, this if anything else, forget religion and immigration and abortion, whatever you could come up with, at least the environment. You need
Mhm.
to breathe the air. You need to drink the water. We all agree that the polar bears are a good thing. Like we can come together
Right.
on this one thing. And like, that whole thing of like, then you get it was like the left fighting to not drill in the Arctic Wildlife Refuge. And the right was like, oh, but it'll create jobs. And it's like, well, that's one thing. We got to stop believing this myth when people go, well, we need to destroy the environment for this thing that's going to create jobs. It's like, okay, so how many jobs? 500 jobs. Okay, 500 jobs times, like, look at the Gulf oil spill and the millions of fishermen and tourism places and homestays and whatever else that got affected. The whole reality of that place was changed by that oil spill.
Mhm.
Was it worth the jobs? Was it, like they keep doing this thing where they tell you it's good for the economy. And so we go, oh, okay, it's good for the economy. And then, but really what's going to happen is a few guys are going to get rich, a few people are
Mhm.
going to get jobs, and then the rest of us, when the oil spills, when the dam kills the river, when the forest is gone, whatever that thing, whatever it is that they're doing, then we all become more poor. And the stress of what's happening to our planet compounds. And it's like, actually in India, again, encouraging stuff from India because they've been beaten up so much by these international companies coming in. I remember reading about how not that long ago, Pepsi came in and built a factory on this river. And
Mhm.
same argument. It's going to create jobs for the local people, and this is going to be a good thing. So of course they pushed it through. They got the permissions. The local politicians got paid. Everybody was happy. And then they put this factory on this river and polluted it so badly that all the fish died and even the goats wouldn't drink the river anymore.
Mm.
So what happened was you had all these probably millions of people downriver. Everyone's it's very densely packed in India, and they had no more fish to eat. Their water supply was gone. They couldn't drink it. They couldn't irrigate their crops with it. And it's like, so their entire way of life was ruined because a few people were like, well, we're going to make a ton of money if we put this factory here. Um, and it's like in India, they're starting to learn, they're starting to get savvy to this. They're starting to be like, okay, so then, like in the state of Kerala here in India, they've actually outlawed the commercial trawlers because they said, you guys are going to come in with these miles long nets and you guys are going to just kill everything in the ocean. We know this now. We're smart enough to know
Mhm.
what you're going to do. And so they banned them and they're sticking to their local fishing methods on smaller boats because they're smarter now. And it's like
Mhm.
we're seeing little bits of that here and there, but it's like, again, the thing that gives me hope is that at the end of the day, this stuff, it is so simple. It's just controlling the humans.
Right, yeah, it seems to me like those currently in the at the top of the power hierarchical structure with how we, divide ourselves, they're not interested in the betterment of the planet and
No,
humans. It's more of
no.
just how can I make a quick dollar? But
Yeah,
I do think that I think that's great that the sort of smaller scale they're sticking to their local fishing methods. I think it's kind of um, telling in that there are individuals and smaller scale groups that are starting to have a larger influence and sort of awaken to the idea that hey, we do need to do something, we do need to conserve our planet. And you saying that it's actually quite simple gives me a little bit of hope because like
yeah,
I sit over here in California, and I'm like, all right, what can I do from a distance to sort of make an impact? That's sort of, something that I think about a lot because I try to be very mindful in my actions on how I'm interacting
sure.
with the planet, how I'm interacting with others, and trying to make the world a little bit of a better, just a better place. So, I
Yeah,
mean, what would you say to, someone who's, I guess, in my situation to where, I do understand that this is an issue and maybe I don't have control at the government level obviously, but what can I sort of do to help in this cause, if you will?
I think there's actually so much that we can do. I mean, 50% of the people on this planet live in cities.
Mhm,
And, most of my family and friends are back home in cities. And so, um, first of all, the thing like even in your own community, as we all know, that there's always new housing developments going up. There's always little conservation stories playing out right in our own backyards.
mhm,
Down to I was recently been fighting with everyone. I've become very passionate about the fact that we should not have feral cats, wild cats that are allowed out at night because they're humans are killing the planet, and then cats are going out and bringing in billions of birds and snakes and all these little
mhm,
other pieces of wildlife that they're annihilating because we're just
right,
letting cats have no right to that. These are wild species. Cats are just this sort of extra thing that comes with humans, this
mhm,
little plague. So it's like, putting bells on cats, trying to control local populations of those. Like that's another one that I've been like really passionate about lately. Obviously, choices as a consumer, choosing to try and use less plastic. And then, especially in Indonesia, we have this palm oil thing. And for anybody who doesn't know, Indonesia has the second largest rainforest in the world. Orangutans, elephants, rhinos, tigers, king cobras, all this beautiful stuff, and of course, tons of medicinal stuff, compounds, indigenous cultures. And we're shaving it off the planet for palm oil. They're cutting down the forest and they're planting these palm oil plantations that are almost endless, also they can put it in like shampoos and Oreos and Nutella and all this. It's just
mhm,
crap. It's just a type of palm oil. Um, and that's another one of those situations where if enough people cared, if enough people said to Nutella, "We're not buying Nutella until you stop using palm oil." Well, it's a company. They have to listen to survive. We have that power. So that's where this whole thing of like personal responsibility blends with the greater picture and sort of like word of mouth and where your values are at, because we have the ability to do this.
mhm,
Um, so yeah, your own backyard, your choices as a consumer, and then of course who you're voting for. The fact that we have presidential debates in America and they literally almost don't mention the environment, or if they do, it's it's global warming, which is a purposefully done tactic to divide us because global warming, if you're not like an atmospheric scientist who has access to all of these papers, you might not know how to prove it to yourself in
Mhm.
either direction. And
Right.
so what I try to focus on is the fact that we have numbers that we've lost 50% of our wildlife on this planet. We have numbers that our ocean fisheries are collapsing because we're overfishing them. We have numbers that deforestation is a huge epidemic. So I stick with the things that I can prove to people, that I have seen, that I have footage of, that are irrefutable facts. Um, and the fact that we have these entire circus debates go on, and no one even talks about this stuff. No one even talks about the bigger picture. Um, and
Right.
so yeah, voting for these guys. But I mean, that's like three levels of responsibility right there. But I think in general, just like the more, like, it makes me even happy when I see people talking about it, not in a depressing way, but like people just actively talking about the fires in California, talking about the Amazon fires, talking about the fact, like, oh man, they're thinking of building a development on like what used to be a state park, and actually going and voting for it. It's like it's a million small things. It's just, and
Right.
again, like, I'm not suggesting that every single person become like this raging tree hugger, but like, I have friends that work on Wall Street who they really have no interest in nature. They'd probably get a sunburn and they'd probably be, upset about the mosquitoes if they went outside ever. But theoretically, they all love to watch document. They all like know that intrinsically nature is good. And if you gave them a choice and you said, "Hey, look, you don't have to lose money, but you can save nature," they'd be like, "Yeah, absolutely, of course."
Right.
And there's a way
Absolutely.
that we can do that.
Absolutely. And I like what you said about with especially the current politics and watching the debates. I don't even bother watching the debates because it feels like
There's no
sort of
reason to.
yeah, it everything they talk about seems to be more of and certainly there are issues in the immigration system and healthcare and things that we need to figure out, but they don't talk about
Sure.
the larger global issues of, you know, deforestation because it almost feels to me like they're afraid of a disruption to the current
Yes.
consumer economy. So by leaving it out, they're not going to bring it to light. By leaving it out, they're not going to uh, have a large amount of people
Yeah.
awaken to these ideas because it's something everybody would agree on. I mean, I remember during the Amazon fires in particular, if you went on Google News within the first, it was the first like day or two of the fires, like probably around the same time you posted that initial video because it was when everybody
Yeah.
was starting to have uproar. If you looked up Amazon fire on Google News, the first 6 or 7 results all had to do with the Amazon fire tablet, like
Oh
so
God.
there was almost
Yeah.
a resistance, I feel like, to even cover it initially, but
Sure.
since it was blowing up on social media, there was almost no real option,
Yeah,
and I
no,
get
that's what was great about it. It was like it was the power of the masses, and it was unfiltered through Twitter and Instagram and everything, and it just came organically. So no one could stifle it. And
right.
it made me think, like, imagine if during one of these debates, picture if like the moderator leaned forward and said, "Okay, guys, what do you think about species loss or extinction?" And like just watching these guys go, "What?" Like,
Right.
sorry, I didn't prepare my notes for that one. It's like, well, okay.
No, absolutely, and it's not a talking point because it's something everybody agrees on, and they sort of
Mm-hmm.
the debates are sort of all about I guess you could even say it's all about entertainment and gaining viewers. It's
Sure.
sort of talking about these distraction topics, if you will. But sort
Yeah,
of
no, it's mind-blowing.
yeah, and I would say there's definitely a need for a shift in the consumer mindset, and just in terms of as a society, we're so focused on buy, and uh, and we don't have to you don't have to do away with consumerism and
No.
overall, but sort of there's a need to shift from consumer as the focal point of society to more of all right, let's have consumerism, but let's focus on the planet and the species on it and the actual things that matter and keep us alive because consumerism doesn't keep people alive. It's the forests and it's the species, it's all of the nature around
Yeah.
us.
No, it really is. I mean, if we didn't have um, someone who I respect a lot once said that he feels like elephants are our older siblings, and when I asked him about it, he said, think of the fact that these elephants have been, there was something like 22 species of different types of elephant-like creatures, mastodons, mammoths, elephants, and they were the ones breaking down and gardening the forest and carrying seeds in their dung, and all of the wildlife, the fish in the oceans, these ecosystems, those are the things that allowed our civilizations to rise in the first place. Without that, we would just be on a barren rock.
Hmm.
And these species make the reality that we live in. And if you want to take it to even the oxygen production from phytoplankton and forests, everything we have comes from nature. And in terms of the consumer thing, like, I always think of when I was a kid, we had a Blockbuster in my town, and then one day, you'd go there, you'd rent a VHS, whatever, and then like one day you went there and there's no more VHSs, there was DVDs,
Hmm.
and we never voted on that, we never decided that. No one was okay with it. We just went and got a DVD player because that's what you had
Yep.
to do, and it's like, well, now stop selling plastic stuff. Stop
Right.
giving people plastic spoons. Stop allowing styrofoam takeaway things at like Chinese food stores and stuff. Like, it's just like, it's so simple. Just get rid of it. We know it's bad. Just take care of that problem. And that's why this thing of the individual level versus the consumer versus the policy level, it's like it all compounds it if it starts with the individual.
Right. And I've met a bunch of individuals, like my sister-in-law, for example, brings a metal straw to every restaurant she goes to. And,
Yeah.
if people ask her about it, it's like, "Oh, why do you have that straw?" And she works in ocean conservation, so she talks about the impact plastic straws has
Yeah.
on the ocean and sea turtles. And so it sort of does start at that individual level, and then you can awaken others to those ideas when they see you doing something at an individual level. So it does.
Absolutely. People follow your example.
Yeah, and it is like leading by example. So that does give me some hope. I'm not a true, I guess, pessimist on this. I definitely have a level of concern and worry, but I do feel like there is enough people talking about it to where it's inevitable that these ideas are sort of growing larger, and it's inevitable that people, especially people, I mean, I'm only 23, and so people my age are, I think, more engaged with these issues more than ever,
Yeah. Way
especially.
more.
Yeah, I mean, you even look at like uh, Greta Thunberg, who's what, 16, and she's this
Yeah.
huge. It's almost, people are amazed that she's leading these climate strikes, but it just kind of shows the impact that one individual person can have and sort of the
Yeah.
influence they can have. So I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your Tamandua expeditions. So when you're bringing people directly into the Amazon, you're bringing people directly to um, what's going on. What is sort of the overarching, like, not just the theme of the expedition, but what is sort of some of the work that you guys are doing and like projects that you're participating in, and like what is sort of the takeaway you hope people come away with?
Well, I run it. I like to make it so it's not. I don't want it to be like a preach fest. Like, to for me, it's like I'm taking people on an adventure. We're
Mhm.
going into this part of the planet where it's jungle and it's wild and there's wildlife everywhere and there's miles and miles of forest and there's poachers and all this stuff. And I just want people to have a great time, because to me, if you can, even somebody that's never been really an outdoors person, but they want to see the Amazon because it's cool, if you can make them have this amazing experience, if you can cultivate that, they're gonna start to care about it. And it's like, I want to do that without being like, guys, we have to save this, at every turn. So what I do is I bring people down there and we do, learning from the indigenous people, like different crafts and medicines, and we do rafting expeditions, and I have study abroads come down, different universities that bring students, and they have not just biology students. They have medical students who are testing medicines in the plants. They have audiovisual people who are just, trying to do like cool social media stuff from the jungle. So we just get all kinds of people, and I just focus on them having a blast in the jungle. And then they sort of inevitably ask the questions of, well, why are you guys doing this? And it's like, well, we're doing this because, we're working with these guys over here because they would be cutting down forests. An example of that is actually just in a few weeks when I go down there, I'm going to be working with this community of illegal gold miners. Now, in the Amazon, the gold is in the soil, so it's
Mhm.
not like in nugs. So they have to cut down the forest, burn the forest, suck up the soil, and then run it through this like mercury sluice, and then they get this bit of gold. But in order to do that, you need to cut down acres and acres of rainforest. And
Uh,
so again, you say, well, oh my God, we have to stop this. We have to like shoot these people. But I did something else. I went to these people and I said, guys, how much do you make gold mining? And it wasn't much. And I said, well, what if you had a better job? I was like, what if you got to show gringos around your forest and we did that instead? So they were like, really? Sure. And so
mhm.
now I'm working with illegal gold miners. And it's like, these are people coming from all over the world that just want to have an adventure and have a fun vacation, an adventurous vacation, and get cool photos. And what the takeaway is that we're getting people to do this really important work. They're taking part in protecting the thing that they're enjoying, and the local people appreciate it. And of course, the wildlife still has a home. And so there's
Right.
all this good stuff that comes out of it, and it's actually like really incredible. So we've been having tremendous success with Tamandua.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was reading quite a bit about it, and it looks like an amazing immersive experience. I mean, you can think about just if I were to go on like just a camping trip alone, like in the wilderness, like I would be there's sort of an emotional attachment. So
Oh yeah,
you don't
it's
have to,
real.
yeah, and you don't necessarily have to preach about, the horrors that are going on with the gold mining or the
Yeah,
cattle ranching in the area and the cutting down of the forest. Because if they're there and you're gaining that sort of connection to it and you're gaining a connection to the species around you and the people around you, it's sort of naturally you start getting curious about the work that you guys are doing down there. I mean, so
yeah.
what is when someone goes on this experience and when they, let's say after it's over, when they go home, is there anything uh, that you hope that they take with them when they go um, back to their homes? Is there sort of a do people come multiple times and sort of gain and go into this field of conservation? Like, what is sort of the mindset that maybe people enter with and then people leave with? Is there a lot of conservation efforts on the individual level after they leave?
Yeah, I really feel like there is because people come down and they fall in love with the place, and a lot of people come back. Almost 50% of the people that come with us return within 2 years,
Oh wow.
and because they want to share it with their friends and family because they're like, we went down there and we saw an anaconda. We went down there and I saw a tree that was the size of our house. So they see these incredible things and they have these adventures, real adventures. Like I tell people when we leave the city, I'm like, look, guys, I know I'm your guide and I know that I'm going to keep you safe, but I'm not in control of who we meet. I'm not in control of whether the river rises or not. And so it's like, right from here on out, this is real life. Like, we'll
Mhm.
keep you safe as best we can, but this is real. And so you get into those situations where you're out on a trail and it's raining or you get lost in something and you have to find your way back. And we always make it out, of course, but the thing that people get is this really authentic experience. And like you said, that connection to the surrounding environment, to nature, just happens. So when people go home, it's that, the next time these conversations come up, the next time an election comes up, they're like, well, how does this affect the Amazon fires? Or, you know, am I buying products that are hurting the rainforest? They think about it a little more. When they hear about a mahogany bedroom set, they might think, well, man, when I was in the forest, I saw those mahogany trees going down and it was absolutely horrifying. I'm not going to buy this. And so those are a few more people that are refusing to take part in that problem, that are making that consumer choice to help the forest. And so,
Right.
yeah, from so many different angles, it really helps. It really changes lives. And yeah, some people, I'd say like maybe one person a year, comes back and says, you know what, I gotta do it. I got everything and do something about this. And that
Right.
takes so many different forms because a lot of people I've found now come to me and they're like, how do I do what you do?
Mhm.
I try to explain to them, like, if you saw the scars on my body, or how many tropical diseases I've had, or how rarely I get to see my family, you might not want my job, but or what it pays. You definitely wouldn't want my job, but but then so many other people are like, okay, well, what do we do? And it's like, all right, well, what if you take Nutella to court? If you're going to be a lawyer, like, help us fight this on a different level. Some people go and represent indigenous peoples in cases where their land is being infringed upon. Some people go back and help us design more effective fundraising campaigns. Some people go back and it's like all these different things
Mm,
with all these different skill sets, where it's like you don't have to be the jungle guy.
right.
I do this because this is in my blood. I've always needed to be in the jungle, but so many people get involved, and they come visit and they do things, but they actually really help our conservation efforts with their own set of tools, with their own strengths, with their own professions, whatever that is.
Right, and that's definitely a really good point as well. Like, I think it's amazing that everybody can sort of impact it in their own unique
Yeah.
individual way. Like, everybody's coming with their own skill set, with their own perspective, with, their own background. Like you're saying, the lawyer taking Nutella to court could be just as effective as, you know, let's say me hosting a podcast, getting this
Yeah.
information out there.
Who
Like, it's sort of
who knows who's
all
listening right now that could, say, hey, I know what you guys could do, and come help us in the hugest way ever. So it's like everything can help.
right. Yeah. Everybody can make their own unique individual difference, which is what I think ultimately sort of needs to happen. Like, if we had a million jungle guys, like, yeah, that would be
Yeah.
helpful. But realistically, your job might not be made out for,
No, 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 no.
probably most of the people who end up listening to this. But I
Yeah,
think I would hope a takeaway is that, they can kind of analyze their own situation and analyze, all right, what is it that I'm good at? What is it that's my calling? And what
hmm,
contributions can I start to make at an individual level? Because there are definitely things that, even though we live in the consumer economy, that's where those in power may not have our best interests in mind. There are ways we can sort of shift things at the societal level through individual action. And
totally.
yeah, I really like that point about
I mean, some
everybody.
of the people that inspire me the most are people that, I know who have amazing backyard gardens, who have said, I'm not going to, waste all the acres I have with grass and mowing it. They've planted,
Mm,
like native species that help migrating butterflies and hummingbirds, and that are good for wildlife. And so they create these little wildlife refuges in their backyards. And it's like, well, now we're seeing that you can totally, like, monarch butterflies are constantly in danger. And it's
mhm,
like, but now so many people know about this stuff. That's the dualism of our age, is that, yeah, everything's getting worse, worse, worse. But at the same time, with the internet and with just how passionate people are, well, more people are doing this stuff where it's like, well, no, I'm gonna just, right here in my own life, I'm gonna do something that helps. And they're doing it.
right.
And it's like that's incredible to me. That's wonderful. And it gives me a lot of encouragement.
Absolutely,
Um,
yeah.
and then
Gives
the other thing was, last year these filmmakers from the Netherlands got in touch with me, and they were like, hey, so we do, like, like medical video. They do some sort of like commercial medical videos and stuff for hospitals and communication stuff. But they were like, what you do is so important. They're like, we want to come down and just, like, do a film on this. And so they did. And I've worked with Discovery Channel, and had a bad experience, and worked with all kinds of different television networks, and usually it's just fluff for television. But these guys came down and they really wanted to film the work we do. They wanted to film
mhm,
what I do when I'm in the jungle, and how I connect with the nature and stuff, and really make this devout, sort of deeper level film. This actually, it's very, very artistic.
mhm,
But it was like right there. It's like these people have nothing to do with the Amazon, but they decided that they were going to, and so they came and they did this film, and so we're working on it. And it's called Dark Green, and
okay.
it's still being made and stuff. But it's like, once that's out, like, just like you said with the podcast, it's like, well, if you can authentically tell a story, that's very powerful today, because you don't know who's going to see it
Right,
and who can
absolutely.
help.
Absolutely, and all it takes is one individual action to, if this podcast helps one person make
Yeah,
more conscientious choices, then it was effective because it's, people are able to make a difference. You never know the what scale of a difference just one individual can make, and that's something I try and tell people all the time. Just
Yeah.
people around me, because I don't think people realize the the power, the authentic power that they have in their own choices, in their own actions, and that sort of change starts at the individual level. So,
Yeah, it really does. And I mean, even for me, I mean, yes, I love the wilderness and the jungle and stuff, but it's been coming back home and talking about the Amazon fires and writing books like Mother of God and The Girl and the Tiger, and just being so full of enthusiasm for the jungle and how awesome it is and how much I love it and how horrified I am. That's the thing that has brought, that started Tamandua, that started Junglekeepers now, and it's literally just, if you rewind back to when I was just like 17 years old and worried about this stuff, it took just kind of jumping in,
mhm,
to be able to actually do anything about it. And it's like, yeah, what I'm doing right now, it's not enough. I need to do a lot more, but a lot has happened, and you know, now I'm at the point where I have people writing to me going, yeah, well, how do I do it? But it's like, well, just not that long ago, I was just some kid that wanted to see the jungle.
right.
So
Yeah, and that first step is often like it's unknown in terms of what's going to happen. Like I'm sure when you were 17 and if I had told you, be like, "Hey, Paul, you're gonna start all
yeah.
these different organizations, and you're gonna be the jungle guy of the Amazon," you know, I'm sure you would have been like, "Nah, you're crazy. That's not gonna happen." But it's sort
Yeah.
of that first step. It's sort of like a leap into the unknown, if you will. And I think we're kind of taught to fear the unknown and fear change. But once you kind of get the ground rolling, it's sort of impossible to predict where
Yeah,
life will end
man.
up taking you. So
Yeah.
sweet,
No,
yeah.
it's so
Well,
worth it. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So we're at about 70 minutes. So I don't have any more specific questions, but I mean, what sort of, I guess, to sort of wrap up, what sort of uh, takeaways would you want to leave any listener to this in terms of, what can they do right now, not just for um, you know, Amazon conservation, but sort of to make a difference just at a societal level? What is sort of a lasting takeaway you'd want to leave a listener with?
I mean, just what we covered, again, just your choices as a consumer, how you treat your own backyard and your own community, who you're voting for. That to me is like one of the biggest ones that we got to start demanding that our leaders are environmentally aware, and if they're not, well, then they shouldn't be leading us. If that's what we care about, it needs to make it onto that discourse. um and just, I of course have to make the appeal on my side that everything I'm doing, all of my projects, from Tamandua, the ecotourism company, to Jungle Keepers that's protecting land, to the books that I've written, everything I'm doing is the aim of it is to connect people to the jungles, to wildlife, to conservation. So, um, if anybody, like we said, people listening have a whole host of different skills that they're good at that could be game changers for someone like me. That could be, which at the end of the day, all I am is conduit. I'm just a voice for really the animals. I do all this because I feel like the animals can't represent themselves. The animals can't go on a podcast. They can't go talk at the UN. They can't do all that stuff. So I do it because I love them and I know them well, and I think that that's what, obviously they would want someone to try and protect where they live. So, um, just that all these projects are geared towards that, and so any support is deeply appreciated by not just me but all the creatures of the jungle.
Absolutely. Well, I'd say you're doing a really good job of it. I mean,
Thanks, man.
yeah,
Appreciate that.
the work you're doing is pretty incredible, and I definitely would encourage any of the listeners to go ahead purchase. I haven't read the Mother of God book, but I've been reading Girl and the Tiger, and it's captivating. It's really really good. Anytime I'm finding time to like actually get to read, I've been reading that. So I'm looking
That's
forward to
awesome, man. That's
finishing
good
it.
to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great work. Honestly, like keep writing more books because it's captivating. So awesome. Is there
All
any?
right.
How would you? Is there any like Places you'd want if they're interested in learning more about you or your work, is there any places you would send them? Just
Honestly, these days, like I mean, my website is paulrosalie.com, but at this point, Instagram has sort of taken the lead. That's where I'm posting all of the, latest updates. And that's where, when I'm in the jungle, whenever I go back to town, sort of upload everything that's new on Instagram, and that's just at Paul Rosalie. So
sweet.
that's where the party's at these days.
Sweet. Yeah. Hey, and I follow him, so I'll give the endorsement that it is worth the follow. So awesome. All right. So with that, Paul, thanks again for coming on. It's great to have you on here. I'm calling all the way in from India. So
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much. Actually, really enjoyed that conversation. We covered a lot.
yeah, absolutely, and hopefully it can um, make a difference for a bunch of people. I mean, even if it's just
I hope
one,
so.
that's the goal. So, all right. So the listeners, you can stay tuned and learn how you can help the show. But with that, that's going to wrap up this conversation. All right. So long, everybody. Hold up. Not so long. I'm still here. Please give us a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever your listening platform may be. The number one way we spread this show, the number one way we can better our planet, better our humanity, make the world a little bit of a better place is by you, the listener, giving us a rating, leaving us feedback, sharing this with your friends. You control who this gets to. I put this out there, I do the best I can, but ultimately it takes listeners to make a difference, to start a revolution, to spread the message. How about Paul Rosolie, everybody? What a cool dude. What a great guy. What work he is doing in the Amazon and India, protecting Mother Earth, protecting wildlife. Ultimately, we are all one. We are all one with the Earth. We are all one with wildlife. We are just another species on this planet who we have learned to manipulate, we have learned to control and externalize our resources. And there's a lot of species suffering because of that. A lot of wildlife suffering because of that. So thank you, Paul Rosolie, for coming on this podcast. And he's a great guy. Check him out. Go to his website, paulrosolie.com. I would love to go on one of his Tamandua Expeditions. I think my goal for that is probably maybe by the end of 2020. Pretty busy, you know. Hey, down the line, I'm only 23. I got a lot of time. So thanks, Paul Rosolie. Check us out on patreon.com/the fifth dimension. Love donations, whatever you can when you can. You know, keeps the show running. Costs me money. I live in Southern California. That place is expensive. Boom, boom, boom. It's all right. I just, I'm not a man of the monetary constraints. I don't like our consumer economy, but gotta keep the show rolling. Check us out on Instagram at the Fifth Dimension Podcast, our most active social media platform by far. We do have Facebook, we do have TikTok, which I'm trying to figure out. Spread this message to the younger generation. If anyone's got any solutions for TikTok, please let me know. It's very difficult. I feel like that old man trying to figure out technology with TikTok. But yeah, check us out on our social media platforms. And as I said earlier, please give us a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, listening platform, subscription. Number one way you can help the show. With that, time to give thanks. Thank you again, Paul Rosolie. Go check out his social media. Go check out his website. Thank you, August Tucker, also known as Roundtree, the man of the music, the intro, this beat that you are listening to right now. Check out his new collaborative album with Atlas Mo. It's called Atlas Roundtree. Available on all streaming platforms. Thank you, Clark Silva, for designing the podcast logo. You can find him Art of Clark Silva on Instagram. He does great work. I've gotten a lot of compliments on the logo, and I love it. It really captures the vibe that we're trying to send out to the universe. Thank you, Ian McDermott, for promoting the podcast by taking a lot of photos and helping out. I encourage you guys, if you're especially into the outdoors and nature, go listen to his episode from last week, Nature's Calling. It's great. And thank you, the listener, tuning in this far, especially. The conversation ended a couple minutes ago, but yet you're still here listening to me. I find that cool. I love that. So, without this show, without you, this show doesn't exist. You know what I'm saying? I Hope you all have a great rest of your day. So long.